Hi and welcome to the Active Code podcast, brought to you by Aspire Active Partnerships. I'm Paul Griffiths and joining me each week on the pod is Luke Johnson.
Aspire Active Partnerships is a community of like-minded business leaders who all believe that collaboration in the sports coaching and children's activity sector is essential for success. We've proven that working in collaboration does benefit business growth and essentially helps more children be more active more often.
To combat physical inactivity, we need organisations that are performing at their very best. Organisations will only operate to high standards if they are led well. So, if we can focus on developing high quality leaders throughout an organisation, not just at the top, customers will experience higher quality services, which means heightened enjoyment levels and increased levels of physical activity. And if we do this at an early age, we know that we can build the foundations for a more active, happier and healthier life. The Active Code investigates what it really takes to be a successful leader and how organisations can combat physical inactivity.
We won't be alone through this journey. We are joined by business owners and experts from our sector, as well as inspirational people from outside our industry. We'll understand the importance of physical activity to our guests, reflect on leadership experiences, and gain thought-provoking insights on how we can crack the Active Code and get more children more active more often. If you like what you hear, please leave us a rating and subscribe wherever you get your pods.
In this episode, we welcome Mark Tonks, the MD of Orange and Blue UK, a learning and development consultancy based in the West Midlands. Mark has been a regional director for LMI-UK for more than 17 years, having made a decision to help develop people to fulfil potential after a successful 20-year career in the industry. With a 60-year history and engaging 2.5 million clients in that time, LMI are one of the most successful learning and development in the world. Mark has a real passion for seeing people achieve more and has worked to help many hundreds of public organisations unlock the potential within their people. Mark is also a fully qualified and accredited executive, has helped raise thousands of pounds for small charities and was, or should I, is still a keen sportsman. Welcome to the podcast, Mark.
Thank you. I'm delighted to be here.
We've covered a little bit there of your background in the introduction to the pod, but can we just start with you telling us a bit more about your professional journey and transition through your roles?
Yeah, sure. So, left school, fairly unfulfilled. Stumbled through a few jobs and then got a job effectively driving all over the country in a transit van, supporting sales guys with paint spraying equipment. I had a great time, 2.5 years. As you can imagine, I was 19. Expense account, the vehicle, what more do you want? Overnight stays all over the country. But I got a flavour of sales and I thought, you know what, I quite like the idea of that. So 2.5 years down the line, I got promoted into a sales job, got my first car, a 1.3 Ford Escort with a windy sunroof. And I thought I'd died and gone to heaven. It was like a sports car for me. So I spent 20 years in the paint finishing industry, started in sales, worked my way through, ultimately became a sales director. Then I became a divisional director of a German company here in the UK. So I ran a division of their business. And I guess that's where in business I really cut my teeth on leadership, because I had a team of people. I had to manage all aspects of the business, the financials, the recruitment, the budgeting, the sales, the marketing, the people, the operations and all that sort of stuff. But the leadership piece was really the thing that got me excited, working with the people. So, you know, I was 39 years old, thought I was probably I've been at that company 10 years, thought I was probably going to stay there for the rest of my life. And then I had one of those surreal moments where you get invited into the office by the managing director, whose opening line is, "Things aren't really working out between us, are they, Mark?" Well, there's only one winner in that conversation, so I left that organisation that afternoon. But it gave me the opportunity there, and I spoke to LMI on the Monday, who I'd been a customer of. We'd used them, and I loved what they'd done for me. I'd loved what they'd done for my team. So I had a long conversation with the then owner of Leadership Management UK, Ray King, and I joined them in November of 2000. As a franchisee, I bought into the business. And then subsequently, I've spent the last 20 years as part of that organisation, as well as, you know, an additional couple of things in the toolbox now in profiling, psychometric testing, and obviously the coaching part of my business as well. But that's the journey. You know, I've loved every minute of the two lives, I call it. You know, my previous life in paint finishing was great, still in contact with many people, and I've really found the stuff I love to do in the last 20 years. So that's how I've ended up here.
Great, yeah, great journey, and I'm sure in the last 20 years you've had some ups and downs. There's a recession. Obviously, we're recording this in the midst of the pandemic, which we've all unfortunately been accustomed to over the last 9 months. But I think the really important fact with regards to your approach on leadership, and something that I think it was on your profile, Mark. You said, I believe leadership is a full contact sport practiced on a day-to-day basis with real human beings and not an academic study of theories or models. Do you want to elaborate a little bit more on that?
Yeah, sort of coming the route I went, I mucked around at school, quite frankly. So I squeezed my way into a few O levels, but I was allowed, very kindly, the school allowed me to stay on and study A levels. But I mucked about, failed my O levels, didn't know what to do, bumbled through life. So my education really is the university of life. And I've seen good stuff and I've seen not so good stuff. And leadership is not an event. It's not a one-off thing. It's not a study in theory. And I see too many people tick a box. I mean, I think it's ridiculous. You can go and do a degree in leadership. You can't do a degree in leadership. Leadership, if you want to learn about leadership, go buy a book. Save yourself thousands, just buy the book, and you can learn about it. If you want to become a leader, you've got to do it, and you've got to do leadership every single day with all those individuals that you interact with. And it is up close and personal. And one of the challenges of trying to lead a business through a screen is there's now a barrier between you and your people. Because it is full contact. It's not sitting in ivory towers. It's walking the floor. It's walking in their shoes. Leadership's about helping other people become more successful. You can't do that through a screen at the end of an email or from an ivory tower. And it's not about all those models people talk about. For sure, all of that underpins what you do, but that's not the thing. And I get frustrated when people talk about, what qualification will I get from doing any form of leadership development or personal development. It's not about the certificate on the wall. It's about what you do on a daily basis with the people you're leading. And that's my frustration, and I see it right across all sectors, this obsession with, what's the qualification? The qualification should be the testimonial your staff give about you. That's the qualification, not a certificate in a frame on a wall. So that's, that's why I badged it up close, personal, full contact sport.
Yeah, and we'll touch on leadership in a bit more detail later in the podcast. This podcast is all about discovering, the active code, trying to solve the active code. And for us, we believe that to get more children more active more often, we need better organisations. To have better organisations, we need better leaders, and that's better leaders throughout the whole organisation. So the whole full contact sport analogy there that we kind of touched on in that conversation we just had there it kind of goes on to my next question, really, about what does physical activity mean to you, Mark?
Well, if you ask my parents, I think from about the age of 18 months, if there was a ball, I kicked it, I picked it up, I threw it. So I've spent all of my life, sport has been a massive part of my life. It shaped me, and I'll touch on something in a little while that really changed the course of my life. But sport to me is an absolute paramount. It's over the years, and like I say, I probably joined my first organised sports club when I was about 5 in terms of football. And then it became cricket, and then it became rugby and running and all sorts of stuff. So to me, it's a major part of my life. And the life-changing thing was when I left school, like I said earlier, I'd mucked around a bit at school. I joined a local rugby club. And it was the first time where I felt I was amongst a group of people that really didn't care what qualifications I'd got, whether I'd got O-levels, A-levels, whether I'd been to university or got a degree. All they cared about, could I play rugby? Would I buy them around after the game? And was I an all right bloke? That's all they cared about. It didn't matter where I came from. And it was the first time I was exposed to a group of people that I aspired to be like. There were 3 or 4 people that mentored me as a 16-year-old, never played rugby before, mentored me, not just about how to play rugby, how to conduct myself, how to go about challenging myself to be better every day, about, not settling for average or mediocrity, push yourself, set some more goals, get in the first team. I joined at 16, having never played rugby in my life. By the end of that first season, I'd got into the first team. I was the youngest player in the club ever to play in the first team. But that wasn't down to me alone. And that was 4 or 5 people taking me under their wing, leading, mentoring and guiding me. So it's a really important point. It matters a lot to me.
Yeah. And I think really interesting there. You touched on it helps shape you, from a young age. The importance of being active at a young age gives you the foundations to lead an active life. You chose to play sport through that active life. So, it really is a solid foundation. Just can't stress enough. And obviously, given the backgrounds we all have, we know that. Challenge, I guess, then comes to how can we convey that to other people that may not be as sporty.
Yeah, the interesting thing was it didn't just, being amongst that group who, it's that, that you surround yourself with better people, you get a better outcome. It was that then I transferred that mindset into my career. So, then the career started to go in the right direction. Once they started to shape my character, my attitudes, my behaviour, you take that to your place of work, you take it into your family life, you take it into your social life, you take it everywhere you go. So, that positive influence that they had on me through sport, I wouldn't have had the career I've had. I wouldn't have set my own company up if I hadn't have experienced that. I just wouldn't have, it would not have happened. I wouldn't have become a divisional director of a German company without that grounding. So that's the impact. It might be one pocket of society, people who engage in sport, but you take the learned skills, attitudes and behaviours and you apply it to all areas of your life. And it works, it's a mindset thing.
Just on those attitudes and characteristics you described there, Mark, what you took on board when you joined that rugby club, what were they? What are the ones that stand out, those key behaviours and attitudes you took from that?
Well, first of all, it was, that I say it a bit glibly that, can he play rugby? So you had to be competent, but they had patience. They showed me the basics. I'd never played before. They taught me with patience all the basics. They looked after me on the pitch as, a little 16-year-old kid who'd only ever kicked a football, never picked up a rugby ball. They looked after me on the pitch. So, you look up to these guys. So the competence level improved. They encouraged me to practice more. So your confidence level goes up. And competence plus confidence is the root of all success, really, isn't it? You've got to be, get good at what you do, but also believe in yourself. So and then it was just the whole. I mean, maybe it's a rugby philosophy. I'm sure Paul would agree. It's similar in cricket. The whole way to carry yourself, conduct yourself, the whole team values, and team ethos. Nobody's bigger than the team. The whole respect for the game, the people in the game, the authorities in the game, all of that stuff you take with you, and the culture of, oh, and by the way, there's no replacement for you. You've got to work hard. You've got to put a shift in. You know, you can be gifted and talented, but you've got to graft as well. You know, I was never the most gifted on the rugby pitch. I worked hard at it though. I became as good as I could be. And that all, those are the things that if you then take that, right, I need to become competent. There's no excuse, or I'm not very good at that. Well, learn to become better. You know, the mindset, the team ethos, the values-driven decision-making. You know, this is how I behave. I'm not going to behave like that. This is what we do. We don't do that. So you take that wherever you go, and that all came through surrounding myself with a peer set that challenged me to become as good as I could become.
Great stuff. How do you keep active now, Mark? You're still playing, gracing the rugby field?
Oh, I wish. I wish. In my dreams, I am still, that 16, 17-year-old learning the ropes. No, mate, my body told me at about 40 it was time to quit. My physio told me at 42, I had a bit of a neck injury, that I should definitely quit. So, and my knees ultimately were the things that led me to pack up rugby. My very last game, I love sharing it, was on the banks of the River Danube, playing against a team from Italy. That was my last first team game ever. That wasn't a bad place to stop, to be honest. So that was quite cool. I'd love to play now. I play a bit of cricket, social cricket. I come in off about a 3-pace run up now, and deceptively slow, I think they describe me as. I love batting, hate fielding because that just hurts. Standing up in a field for 3 hours isn't good. I go to the rugby club most weekends when we could, obviously. I do a lot of fitness work, been working out throughout lockdown, doing insanity HIIT training with my 31-year-old son, and I'm very proud to say I saw him off. He got injured and I was still going. So that and I'm 60 in April, so I was very pleased about that. So yeah, but I combine that now with things like meditation, and I do lots of walking. If I can't run because of my knees, I do lots of walking, and obviously I do my charity walk once a year, which is 38.5 miles for charity. So I'm active all the time. If I'm not doing something daily, I start to get a bit worried about it all. but I think you're probably aware, I do have an underlying reason as well, which drives me on in that area, which was, back in 2015, despite being very fit, and I think this is a differentiator, I was very fit, but I wasn't very healthy, and I suffered a heart attack. So I had to have a triple bypass. That's a bit of a wake-up call. I was 53. That sort of wakes you up to, it's not all about going down the gym and doing the hard yards. It's about how you treat yourself and how you look after yourself. So I'm much more mindful now about meditating. I've gone plant-based on my diet. I started that at the start of lockdown. So I've lost, stone and a half. There is a 15 on the scales now for the first time in 20 years. So that's pleasing. So I'm under 16 stone. I wasn't under 16. I was under 16 stone when I was playing regular rugby, and I was really fit and all the rest of it. But so, I sleep better, I eat better, I exercise regularly, I drink loads of water. I barely drink alcohol. I know that will come as a shock to many. I've probably had three beers since lockdown last year. I just don't drink. So yeah, I look after myself.
Yeah. I think it's unfortunate. You hear it a lot, don't you? It's really unfortunate incident that happened in 2015, and like you say, it's a wake-up call. And unfortunately, it takes that at times, doesn't it? And I know LMI, having gone through the the courses at LMI run, which are fantastic, and it kind of really opened my eyes to the what is leadership and that whole total person approach that LMI have, and something I know you're a big advocate on. So, do you just want to go into a bit more detail of that and the importance of that, those 6 areas, really?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, it's really interesting now because it's really relevant now with this. We are in a challenging time. I think, the whole pandemic has been in itself a challenge, but I don't think we've been fully impacted yet by the state of the economy. I think that's coming down the tracks as well. I am an optimist, and I do believe the bounce back will be good and quite quick. But the economy has taken an absolute beating. So many people are really, and I understand why, are really focused on their workplace. That we call it career and finance, and they're really fixated on that. And I get it, and I understand it. But we look at 5 other areas. So career and finance, business, that's one area we look at. But, we also get people to look at their physical and health, as we're talking about today, because you're no good at work if physically you're a wreck. I had to take a year off. I run my own business. There's nobody bringing in the bacon when I'm recovering. So physical and health is really important. But also, mental and educational. If you're physically in a great place, but mentally you're all over the shop, that's not going to be very useful for you. So we look at mental and educational. Social and cultural, it's probably the one that's challenged most right now. And I jokingly say to people, get a life. It's not all about work. So go and experience the world, go and socialise, go and explore culture and all that sort of stuff. Difficult right now, but it needs to be worked on. Family and home, obviously massively important to many people. And that's, it's great if you're giving it all to work, but your home life's trashed. That's not going to do you any good either. And then the 5th area is what we call spiritual and ethical. And I'll be honest with you, this is the one that freaks most people out because they assume we're talking about religion. For some people, of course, it's a religious thing, and there's, that's great. That's their thing. But we're looking at something bigger than that. We're looking at that area in your life that involves your values, your ethics, it's bigger than you. It's that giving back part. And what our experience shows us, if people ignore that part of their life, all of the other 5 areas can actually be in a good place. But if that values, ethics, the way you conduct yourself, your beliefs, if that's ignored or compromised, the rest will go wrong pretty quickly. So we really encourage people to look at themselves, their emotional intelligence, their values, their beliefs. What do they stand for? And get involved in stuff you stand for. And I suppose the magic is, if you could have a career. I'm very lucky. I do something I believe I'm good at, that I love to do, and I actually stand for it. This is a passion for me, and I get paid for doing that. So I'm privileged, and I guess to a degree, Paul, I think knowing you as I do, I think you feel about the same about what you do.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, really quite privileged. I think you almost feel that you've lucky in a way, but I think you
absolutely. But again, we would encourage people to make their own luck. Design that future success. Yeah. Design that area that you want to work in. So those 6 areas,
Yeah, firm belief. I think you create your own look, don't you? I think, and it's not. It doesn't just happen. For some people, it does. It just happens. But for the vast majority of us, you've got to put a shift in. You alluded to the hard work on the from a sporting context, and you've learned to. You can't be spoon fed. Some people are unfortunate to have that done, but you've got to put the hard yards in to get that success. And when I say success, I mean that in that kind of total leadership and that total person approach that we're talking about in all those different areas. And in the pandemic, things change and your focuses shift, and not just in the pandemic, just in general. In various months, you may focus on family maybe a key focus, but then it might shift towards business in a bit more direction. But we've always got to keep all of those elements really kind of on our radar, haven't we? We can't let them slip. So what I'm interested to just delve into now is, so how do we, you're obviously talking around the physical health side of things. So how can we promote physical activity and the importance of it to more people, in particular those people that don't have that sporting background?
This is going to sound really weird. I've been thinking about this. I think we've got to normalise it again. When I grew up, when I was a little kid, sport was normal. It's just what you did. It wasn't special. You went to school. Sport was just what you did. It was on the, whatever they called it back then. I don't know if it was called a curriculum. But every lunchtime you went outside to play. It wasn't called lunchtime. It was called playtime. We had playtime. So you went out and played. You ran around the field. You ran around the playgrounds. You ran around the places at school you shouldn't run around, because you always push the boundaries, and but that was normal. When you went home, you went out to play. It was normal. And I think slowly over time, for whatever reason, you know probably a million times better than me, all of that sort of started to stop. And I don't want to get into a political conversation and the reasons behind it, but it started to stop. And now we're sort of taking sport as, oh, right, we've got to do something special to reintroduce it. Sport should be normalised again. It should be just what is expected. It's what we do. So there's one area, I think, where and how, I mean, I'm no magician. How you do that, I haven't got a magic formula for. But the other thing with kids, and I passionately believe this about all education, but life in general, is stop measuring kids against each other. So that, Johnny's good at sport, but and Sally's good at sport, but these two kids aren't as good as them, so they're not good at sport. It's that measure them against who they are, what they can achieve, and how they can better themselves. Stop comparing them to other kids. If you're brilliant at rugby and somebody's brilliant at table tennis or maths, don't compare them to the person that's brilliant at rugby. Compare them to how good could they become at table tennis, how good could they become at maths. So then you get individual learning and growth, rather than compared to what is normal for a child of 7. They should be able to do this. I don't buy into that. I don't buy into that right across the curriculum, because some kids are going to be brilliant, some kids aren't. All they can be as good as they can be. And I do get this feeling that they're trying to normalise kids. Kids are special. Who's to say that Graham, who's brilliant at chess, is no more or less a sportsman than Sally, who's an Olympic athlete? He's brilliant at chess. So I think, is there a way of bringing in individual learning into sport so that people don't feel disenfranchised because they're not as good as the other kids in the class? But look how you developed in the last month. You scored 4 in month 1, you scored 6 in month 2. You're 50% better than you were. You're not as good as Fred, who scored 10. That's where I think some improvements could be made. You might correct me and go, Mark, that's already happening. I don't know. But,
I think it seems, Mark, like a general thing in schools across the board, though. There's an expectation that everyone should be hitting, rather than it being individualised, like what you said. And you said earlier that you reach your potential in rugby. You made that as a key point. You had your potential, and that's what you strived for. And you also spoke about those leaders or peers you had at that rugby club that helped you grow as a person when you started playing rugby. Who is the most inspirational leader you've worked with, either professionally or personally?
Well, that's a good question, because it's a question I've asked myself, it's a question we ask in one of our programs, to name those people. So in a professional capacity, and I think it's really sad to say, people, companies that I was employed by, I wouldn't put anybody into the category of a leader that I would aspire to become like. They had some good points. They were all flawed, but my overall impression of them wasn't positive, which is a sad reflection, really. Considering the billions that get spent on leadership development every year, that my personal experience. So when I joined the rugby club, those guys, I wasn't employed by them. They inspired me. In work, I've come across people I've worked with in terms of customers or suppliers that I thought, they've got something about them. Subsequently, obviously, setting up my leadership practice, I meet people every week who inspire me. I don't work for them. Some of them are customers. Some of them are people I've networked with. Some of them people I've read books about. So, the list is endless. There are a few people I put on a pedestal who I've met and I've had the privilege to meet and have inspired me. And some of them actually are significant. Some of them are kids that I coached at Arthur Terry School back in 2006. And it's just what they've gone on and done in their own careers and lives, I get great inspiration from. In 2006, we ran a programme, and I knew what they were like then, and I see where they are now. That's where I get my inspiration from. Yes, I read books, John Maxwell, love him to bits, Simon Sinek, love him to bits. But there's a million and one. Paul J. Mayer, the founder of LMI, obviously I got inspired by that. But I'm disappointed that I've never had a boss that was somebody I wanted to be like. Saddens me.
Yeah, that is a shame, isn't it? Really, but it's really interesting. Yeah, that is a shame. Yeah. If we were to ask one of your colleagues or clients about your leadership style, what would they say?
Flawed, probably. I would think they would probably suggest it is fairly direct and fairly decisive. So I know myself very well, and I know where I have to temper my directness. I have to practice my listening. I have to practice my empathy, and I have to practice my patience. So if you spoke to people, from my previous lives, who I've led formally or informally, they would probably say, I'm best in a crisis because I'm fairly decisive, but I probably am not the best listener. But I know that, and I practice it, and remind myself daily that's what I must do.
Yeah, and that's a really good point there, because I think there's a lot of people, leaders of organisations, big and small, that probably miss the point on that. They probably fail to recognise some of their flaws that they need to develop and work on. And I know some of the organisations that we work with, we've got a mix. We've got people, I'm sure it's just from what you experienced, Mark, we've got people that understand that if they make mistakes, that's a way of developing and an opportunity to learn and get better and improve as a leader. But then there's also those people that kind of turn a blind eye to it and unfortunately think maybe they're the best thing since sliced bread, and they continue doing what they're doing. So,
well, it's really interesting, Paul, because one of the questions I have to ask when I go and see people when they're contemplating doing any form of leadership development with their team is because many times they'll say, "Oh, it's not me, it's my people. It's not me, it's them. They need to be fixed." And I have to ask that unfortunate and challenging question at some point in the conversation. Do you think their performance as it is because of them or the way you lead them? And that's a tough call when you're asking somebody to spend money with you, to sort of say to them, look, you know, it might be you. You know, I probably had this conversation with you those years ago. It might be you. Had you thought about that one? And any leader that says, no, it's not me, in my world, I don't think they're a very good leader, quite frankly. Because I would argue it's always about the leader. Always. Irrespective of how they want to develop their team. Any leader that says to me, it's not me, I don't need it, they're not a very good leader. Because as I said, it's a day-to-day, up-close and personal, full-contact sport. You learn new stuff every single day when you're leading. And anybody that thinks they know it, it's a time to quit. It's a time to get them out of the seat.
So earlier, Mark, you spoke about children and the whole data approach and trying to compare them, where realistically we want children to be better versions of themselves. And I think that's a key point from a leadership perspective in organisations as well. We've been doing a little bit of research recently with organisations that we work with in our sector. And it's really interesting that there's a mix of organisations that will put things out there to get feedback on their leadership. So, you know, whether you call that benchmarking in your world or not, I'm not sure. But does that help? Is there an important side of that? You know, does that help get us? Does that help leaders get that feedback in so we know where to improve and we know how to get better?
I think it's vital that you get from the people you're leading their feedback on what you do that's brilliant, how you help and how you hinder. And you know, again, one of the things I really encourage leaders to do is, you know, just a 5-minute coffee conversation around the coffee machine, you know. So just, you know, whilst you've got a minute, give us some feedback. If there was one thing that I could stop doing that would help you, what would it be? It's a great question to ask your team. Just one thing, you know, I'm not going to hold it. Just tell me if there's one thing that's, you know, just getting in the way that I'm doing. Just tell me what it is. Because you know, leaders are busy people. They get the blinkers up. They get immersed in what they're doing. And unless they stick their head up, open their ears, take a look around, listen and learn. Well, right now it's really challenging for leaders because they've got their head nailed into, for most organisations, staying alive. You know, they're still in, how are we going to get through this thing? But I think it's crucial they get that feedback, as long as they take it as learning and not criticism. And that's the danger piece, is somebody go, right, so what do you think of me then? I'll show you. It's learn from it. It's not a criticism. It's positive. Everybody wants to do better. So I think it's fundamental. It should be done all the time.
Yeah, I think that's a key trait of high performing leaders in, you know, whether it's sporting context or business, that those higher performing leaders are those people that see what you could say criticism, constructed feedback. Take that. You've got to take that on board to help you improve. I just personally, I don't get the mindset of, you know, the drawbridge comes up, it's like defensive and go into that mode. And I'm sure you've come across lots of people over the years that are like that, which, you know, I don't understand that, but it happens.
Had a great conversation with somebody who, you know, obviously not going to name names. About 18 months ago, I had a conversation at board level along the lines of stop being so judgmental and start helping. There was a situation within an organisation where people who've been in leadership positions for some time were being very critical and judgmental of people who newly appointed to leadership roles. I had a conversation with that same individual 2 days ago. We just caught up with each other, and she gave me some fantastic feedback about these guys now. And she said, and I remember that conversation, Mark, where you called us out on it. And she said, we started helping and they've risen to it, and now they're brilliant. They're doing a fantastic job. And you know, and I'm guilty of this. We all get a bit judgmental, rather than, you know, and I think it's who was it? One of the super coaches, Marshall Goldsmith, I think it was. Less judging Be less judgmental, be more helpful. I'm not going to judge you on what you've just done, but I'm going to help you do it better next time. That's what we should do as leaders.
Yeah, and going on from that, obviously, in your role is to develop and nurture better leaders. And I know this could go on. Yeah, this could be a podcast in its own right. It could be a whole 10 series podcast. But in a nutshell, how do you ensure you develop leaders?
They all come and do 4 LMI programs, Paul. I'll give you a call. We'll have a chat about this. Again, it's that encouragement of one size doesn't fit all, and it's encouraging. Look, say you've done an LMI program, great. That doesn't make you a great leader. It means you've done an LMI program and you've learned some stuff. Go and experience. You've been and done, Goldman Sachs and this, that, and that constant learning. Whether it's my stuff, other people's stuff, whether it's reading, whether it's a podcast, whether it's a TED talk, you should be learning every day. You should be putting good stuff in every day, because the minute you think I've cracked this leadership thing, tick the box, get the sheriff's badge. It's a day to quit your role. You should be constantly, just like we encourage our kids. We don't encourage our kids to stop learning. Well, we shouldn't stop learning as leaders. There's always something new out there. There's always something out there that we already know that we've stopped doing for some bizarre reason. Everybody's guilty of that one. Yeah, I already know that. Yeah, but are you doing it? Oh no. Why did you stop? That's a really good question. I don't know. And much of it is basic common sense and practical, and it's not rocket science. Most of leadership is basic, practical common sense.
Mark, we've touched on the school side of things. We've touched on sports clubs as well, and that's very much the industry we're in. What can our industry, the sport, the education industry, learn from other sectors to help combat inactivity?
I suppose it's not being afraid to go explore other sectors. I think, Paul, you very, very kindly gave me the book Legacy about the All Blacks and how they went to the American football camps to learn about, here's a team that's like world champions in their own right, the best team ever, had one blip of a season or whatever it was. Let's go and explore what other people are doing. And I know Eddie Jones does it, and I know Pep Guardiola does it. These people who are perceived to be the greatest leaders and coaches are constantly going into uncomfortable situations. I mean, a lot of people go and visit the military. So, for education and sport, go and visit other companies. Go and spend a day with a law firm. How far away from education and kids could you get? I don't know. Law firms, marketing agencies, architects, whatever, charities. Go and explore. It was one of the things I did the Common Purpose program a few years ago, and that was one of the great things about that. I went to places to listen about leadership. I'd never go. I went to prisons. I went to Belfast for the day, which was mind blowing. Spending the day with the leaders of Belfast City Council. And when you think about the challenges, say, Birmingham faces as a city compared to the challenges those guys had to face, it was just, so it's take the blinkers off, I guess. What can we learn is learn to take the blinkers off, go and sit in the shoes of leaders in other scenarios. And if you come away with one good idea, then that's been worth a day's trip, hasn't it?
Yeah, completely agree. I did the Common Purpose course, Mark, back that's probably about 6-7 years ago now, and I don't think I've ever felt more out of my comfort zone. Visiting young offenders, prisons, the arts world, public sector, and you're completely right. Immersing yourself in those environments that challenge you is one of the most powerful things I think you can do as a leader. 100%.
It's I think. Kate Philp, who I had speak at one of my lunches, she's an ex-major in the army who got blown up and lost a limb in combat. She put it really quite well. She said, you've got to become comfortable being uncomfortable. And if all leaders were prepared to do that in any sector really, but in yours, become comfortable getting uncomfortable, go to places that really make you uncomfortable, because you'll find something. There's always something to learn.
100%. So talk about the learning side of things. You've already mentioned a couple of authors and books that you've read. If listeners want to enhance their leadership skills or their organisation, what 3 books, podcasts, or key people would you recommend that they follow?
Okay, so I would definitely, if they're in a leadership position leading a team, I would definitely suggest they read Legacy. I just thought that was one of the best books I've ever read, which is all about the New Zealand All Blacks. And I believe there's also a similar, there's a couple of films about Man City, I think, with Pep Guardiola. Is it Barcelona or the New England Patriots?
Yeah, All or Nothing. I think that's an Amazon series, All or Nothing. Which
So I've already mentioned, name check, John Maxwell. John Maxwell. I just love his style. Great books, Irrefutable Laws. Again, common sense, practical application ideas. Simon Sinek, of the more recent guys, I really like his take on leadership. But also I would encourage, as I do as part of my, you asked earlier, how do I challenge myself? I watch lots of TED Talks. I think that's a great resource. And I've got 7 or 8 podcasts. I love Marshall Goldsmith as a coach. I love his style. And he's got loads of stuff I've got in my YouTube library now that I watch, 6 questions to ask any leader. And Marshall Goldsmith coached like CEOs of Ford. So he's like a super coach. So really working with, real big corporate leaders. So those would be people, but just immerse yourself in it. And the beauty is now, Paul, is that there's so much free stuff available on the internet and YouTube. You can immerse yourself in personal development, leadership. So John Maxwell, Simon Sinek, read the Legacy book about the All Blacks, engage in the TED Talks. You won't go far wrong.
Yeah, there's plenty there for people to get stuck into. Yeah, some really, really good recommendations there. We may have already touched on this, but I'm going to ask the question. We've got a couple of quick fire questions at the end. But what one thing needs to happen to get more children more active more often?
Just the one thing that's going to crikey. I'll probably come back to that thing I said earlier. Make it normal. Make sport normal. It's what you do. It's just a normal part of daily life, or maybe not sport, movement. I think you call it. So it's normal to walk to work. It's normal to have playtime. It's normal to run around. It's normal to play on swings and slides. It's normal to, throw a cricket ball. It's just normal. And how you do that, that's the challenge. But sport shouldn't be, it is special, but it shouldn't be regarded as, we've got this special event today, we're doing a bit of sport. It should be, we've got something special today, we're taking a day off from sport. We're going to go and watch something. We're going to sit down for 5 minutes. Get them to stand up in class. Get them to, have 5 breaks a day for 5 minutes when they're charged with running around the field. I don't know. But make it normal.
Excellent. And one final question then, Mark. The podcast is called The Active Code, and it's really looking at what are the secrets that organisations can kind of discover. Can they crack the active code and get the nation active, really? So what would your advice be to other organisations in the sector to crack the active code?
I suppose the people that you've really got to get on side are parents. Engage with parents. Because without them, you can, it's a bit like we talk about, we get people once every 2 weeks for 3 hours. But what happens when they go back to work? If if the leaders of the kids' lives aren't engaged with it, what happens when they go back home? What happens when they have 6 weeks off in the summer? And I know Malcolm Gladwell wrote a book, Outliers, and sort of part of that talked about the kids in the States that really suffer are the ones that when it's not during the time they're at school that they slip back. It's when they're not at school and on their summer vacations and all that. If you like, the active kids continue to be active. The non-active kids get worse. They go backwards during the time they're not at school. So how do you hook the parents into this? And it links up to all sorts, where they live, where are the green spaces, where are the outdoor spaces, people who live in blocks of flats who haven't even got a balcony. How are you going to get your kids active? Get them to run up and down? Well, yeah, I suppose so. The lift will be broken. Get them to run up and down the stairs. But it's not, I don't think you can isolate it just in schools. It's a bigger thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's a whole of life thing.
Yeah, and I think you're right. I think the education sector gets a hard rap at times when it comes to there's any issues. It's all the teachers' fault. And I think you're right. We've got to. And I think what I've loved about this podcast, Mark, is we've kind of started with, you talked about your play and your movement from an 18-month baby to where you are now, and how sport and you being active has really kind of helped you get to where you are now. It's helped shape you as a leader, as an individual, as a person, and I've really enjoyed the last 50 minutes because I think it will help lots of people and make them understand that there is an importance of being active, both from you shared about your unfortunate heart attack, and the journey that you've gone on, both pre and post heart attack as well, which has been really interesting, and the way of embedding activity, but really instilling the leadership side of things, and making sure we've got better leaders in our space. So I just want to thank you for joining us. Really appreciate your time. I know you're a busy man. Really appreciate you sharing your insights, and I'm sure it will help lots of people. Before we go, is people learning more about you, what you offer? Just a little plug, really, Mark. So where can people get in touch with you, follow you?
Yeah, look me up on LinkedIn. I'm very active on there. Lots of videos sharing ideas about how to lead. So we're not plugging what we do. We're actually, if you like, giving away our IP for free. If they want to drop me an email, it's mark@orangeandblue.uk, nice and simple. My website is www.orangeandblue.uk. Get in touch, and my way of doing business is, we'd have to do it virtually now. We have a coffee and a chat, and if there's any way I can help, I will. If there is any way I can't, I'll try and find somebody that can.
Brilliant. Thanks very much, Mark.
Thank you, Mark.
Great to talk to you guys.
Cheers. Take care. Cheers.
Join us next time for the Active Code podcast. Remember to subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss an episode. You can connect with us on Twitter @aspire_partners, and find out more about us and the network at www.aspireactivepartnerships.co.uk.